I was sitting in my car in a grocery store parking lot, engine still on, radio low, just staring forward for a second longer than normal. It was late, not dramatic late, just late enough that the place felt half asleep. I had a receipt folded up in my hand like I always do, even though I almost never look at it. I didn't buy anything weird. Same stuff I usually grab. A couple things I didn't really need. Nothing that felt irresponsible. And that's kind of what bothered me. There was this quiet irritation I couldn't explain. Not panic, not guilt. Just the sense that something had moved again without asking me. Like money had made another decision while I wasn't paying attention. I remember thinking how strange it is that most financial choices don't feel like choices at all. They feel like momentum, like gravity. Things just keep rolling the way they already are. I told myself it was too small to matter. I always do. I wasn't broke. I wasn't stressed. I just felt dulled. Like I'd agreed to something without remembering when I signed up. And sitting there, car humming, receipt still warm in my hand, I realized how many of my money decisions feel exactly like that. Quiet, automatic, already decided before I noticed them happening. I've been thinking a lot about the word normal. Normal spending, normal upgrades, normal costs of living. It's such a comforting word. Normal feels approved. It feels like you're doing life correctly. I used to measure my money choices almost entirely against what looked normal around me. Same phone everyone had, same apps, same delivery services, same little conveniences stacked on top of each other. It never felt like pressure, that's the thing. It felt like alignment, like I was just keeping pace. I remember upgrading something once, nothing big, about $20 more a month. I barely hesitated. It felt outdated not to. $20 didn't feel like a decision, it felt like maintenance. And at the time, that logic sounded completely reasonable in my head. What I didn't feel in that moment was the weight of it repeating. $20 a month is $240 a year. Over 5 years, that's $1,200. For something I stopped noticing after the first week. I didn't feel reckless. I felt normal. And that's what made it harder to catch. Because nothing went wrong right away. Life kept moving. The money just kept leaving quietly, in ways that always felt easy to defend. I didn't notice the subscriptions at first. They never announce themselves. They just show up as lines you stop reading. $10 here, $13 there, a streaming service I used once a week, an app I downloaded during a motivated phase that never really came back. None of them felt serious enough to question. That was the trick. Each one felt too small to be worth the effort of canceling. At one point, I counted them, not on purpose. I was just scrolling through a statement and started recognizing names. 8 subscriptions, then 9. Most under $15. I remember thinking, that's fine. That's nothing. Then I did the math anyway. Rough, lazy math. Around $120 a month. Over $1,400 a year. What bothered me wasn't the number. It was how long I let it exist without looking. I wasn't being fooled. I wasn't trapped. I just didn't want to admit how easy it was to keep paying for things I no longer valued. Canceling felt like acknowledging that I'd moved on. And for some reason, that felt heavier than losing the money quietly. Food is where convenience sneaks in the fastest. Not the big meals, the small decisions layered together, delivery fees, service charges, tips that start reasonable and drift upward. I remember a stretch where I ordered delivery 3 times a week. It never felt excessive. I wasn't ordering fancy stuff, just regular food on regular days because I was tired and didn't want to think. Each order cost about $18 more than picking it up myself, but 3 times a week is $54. Over a month, that's more than $200. Over a year, it's closer to $2,400 just to avoid leaving the house. I remember feeling defensive when I first realized that, telling myself I was busy, that I earned it, that life was stressful. All of that was true, and none of it changed the number. What stuck with me wasn't the money. It was how the convenience didn't actually give me back any energy. I was still tired, just poorer in a way that never showed up as a single painful moment. I've always been drawn to the slightly better option, the one that's just a little more, the upgrade that feels like it makes sense. Bigger storage, faster delivery, premium access. It never felt indulgent. It felt practical, responsible even. $30 more a month didn't feel like a splurge. It felt like a smart choice. until I stopped noticing it entirely. That's when it got uncomfortable. $30 a month is $360 a year. Over 5 years, that's $1,800. For something that stopped feeling special almost immediately. The benefit faded, the cost didn't. I remember realizing that one night and feeling oddly disappointed. Not angry, not panicked. Just disappointed in how quickly I adjusted. The upgrade didn't make my life noticeably better. It just became the new baseline. And the money kept leaving for a benefit I no longer felt. That felt like paying rent on something invisible. Something I didn't even think about anymore. Credit cards make everything quieter, especially the everyday stuff. Gas, groceries, random stops on the way home. Swiping doesn't feel like spending. It feels like postponing the feeling. I carried a balance for a long time without calling it a problem. A few $1,000s, nothing dramatic. At around 20% interest, $4,000 costs about $800 a year just to exist. $800 for nothing tangible, no object, no experience. Just time passing. I paid it slowly, month by month. It never hurt enough to force a reaction. What unsettled me later was how normal that felt. I wasn't drowning. I wasn't panicking. I was just floating in a mildly uncomfortable place and calling it fine. $800 a year disappeared quietly, and I never treated it like an emergency. I treated it like weather, something I couldn't control, something I didn't bother questioning. Raises are supposed to help. That's what we tell ourselves. More money means more breathing room, but I've noticed how often raises turn into permission instead. Permission to spend a little more, live a little bigger, upgrade things that suddenly feel justified. I got a raise once that came out to about $300 more a month after taxes. It felt great for about 2 weeks. Then the money disappeared. Slightly higher rent, better groceries, a few more conveniences, nothing reckless, just life expanding to fill the space. $300 a month is $3,600 a year. It didn't change my savings. It didn't change my stress. It just vanished into habits that quickly felt normal. What bothered me wasn't that I spent it. It was that I felt no more secure afterward. The raise didn't buy peace. It bought a quieter version of the same routine. Boredom is expensive, not in obvious ways, just small, frequent ones. Scrolling late at night, seeing something that looks interesting enough to go click by. $40 here, $35 there, nothing memorable. I went back once and looked at a stretch of purchases like that. One a week, on average. About $40 each. That's $160 a month. Almost $2,000 a year. And I could barely remember what I'd bought. That's what made it uncomfortable. The money left, but the memory didn't stay. It didn't add joy, it didn't add meaning, it just filled a moment. I remember telling myself it was harmless, and maybe it was. But it replaced something. Attention, stillness, rest. Whatever it was, I never wrote it down. I only noticed the total later. Social spending never feels optional. Birthdays, dinners, celebrations. You don't want to be the person who makes it weird. So you say yes. $75 here, $120 there. You don't track it because tracking it feels petty. Until you do. I added it up once. A year of dinners, events, and casual obligations. Over $3,000. That number felt awkward, like I wasn't supposed to know it. Like counting it meant I didn't value the people. But the discomfort wasn't about them. It was about how often I chose short-term ease over long-term relief. Paying felt easier than explaining. Showing up felt easier than opting out. And that ease came with a cost I never discussed. Not with anyone else. Not even with myself. Treating myself used to mean something. It used to be rare. Now it's scheduled. Coffee, snacks, small rewards layered into the week. About $25 each time. 4 times a week. $100 a month. $1,200 a year. I didn't feel guilty about it. I felt entitled. Life was stressful. Work was draining. I deserved something. And that logic always won. It sounded compassionate, reasonable. What bothered me later was how little joy it brought. The treats stopped feeling like treats. They became maintenance. The stress stayed. The spending stayed. The meaning faded. I wasn't rewarding myself anymore. I was just filling space with things that used to feel special. Fees are the easiest money to lose because they don't feel personal. Bank fees, app fees, convenience charges. They feel like background noise. I paid them without reaction. $7 here, $12 there. I never fought them. When I finally added them up, it was over $400 in a year. $400 for nothing. No benefit, no improvement. Just the cost of not paying attention. What bothered me wasn't the amount, it was the passivity. I spent time earning that money, and I gave it away because it felt easier than caring. That realization sat heavier than the total. I wasn't overwhelmed. I was indifferent. And that indifference wasn't free. Putting things off feels neutral. Changing a plan, reviewing a bill, switching a service. It always feels like something for later. I stayed on an overpriced phone plan for years because dealing with it sounded annoying. It cost about $30 more a month than it needed to. That's $360 a year. Over 3 years, more than $1,000. To avoid one afternoon of effort. I told myself I was busy, and I was. But the money didn't care. The discomfort came from realizing how often busyness becomes an excuse that costs real money. Not deciding is still a decision. I just didn't like admitting that I chose convenience over clarity. I used to think future money would fix everything. Once I earn more, this won't matter. I said that at one income level, then another, then another. Each time, it sounded reasonable. I went back and estimated how much I spent under the assumption that it was temporary. Over 5 years, it was unsettling. Not because of one bad choice, because of optimism. Consistent, well-meaning optimism. Future me never showed up to erase it. He inherited it instead. That was uncomfortable to sit with. Not because I failed. Because I trusted something abstract instead of noticing what was actually happening. I round down constantly. $9.99 becomes $9. $4.99 becomes $4. Language makes spending feel lighter, and I play along. When I added up a month of rounded down purchases, it crossed $300. That number didn't match how it felt at all. The disconnect was unsettling. It wasn't manipulation that bothered me. It was cooperation. I wanted spending to feel easier, so I helped it along. The money didn't disappear faster. It just disappeared quieter. Familiarity feels safe. Same insurance, same services, same routines. Reviewing them feels risky, uncomfortable. So I paid for comfort instead. I never calculated how much that cost over time. When I finally did, it was thousands. Quietly paid for the feeling of not rocking the boat. I told myself stability was worth it. Maybe it was, but I never checked the price. I assumed it was fair. That assumption lingered longer than it should have. Stress spending doesn't feel indulgent, it feels justified. A hard day earns a small escape. $20 after work, twice a week. Over $2,000 a year. The stress didn't leave. The spending didn't solve it. I wasn't irresponsible, I was coping. But coping had a receipt I didn't want to read. That realization didn't change anything overnight. It just sat there, quiet, unresolved. I avoided looking closely for a long time. Statements, patterns, totals. Avoidance feels peaceful until it doesn't. When I finally looked, what hurt wasn't the number. It was recognition. Seeing myself repeated. The same habits. The same choices. Over and over. It felt like the page knew me better than I knew myself. That discomfort wasn't panic. It was familiarity I couldn't deny anymore. I labeled myself early. Not good with money. Bad at saving. Just how I am. Labels lower expectations. When I calculated what those excused habits cost over a decade, it was tens of thousands. Easily. That number felt unreal. But it wasn't. Shrugging had weight. I just didn't feel it at the time. None of this felt dramatic while it was happening. Life didn't collapse. Bills got paid. Things kept working. The damage wasn't loud. It was cumulative. When I imagined an alternate version of the same income with different accumulation, the difference wasn't flashy. It was heavy. That realization came late one night. Not with panic, with sadness. Recognition stayed longer than regret. I'm at home now, late, scrolling through a bank app without urgency. The room is quiet. Nothing feels wrong. There's a small monthly number I don't ignore anymore. It's not dramatic. It just sits there. I'm still figuring it out, still noticing, still tired. And I stop here not because there's a solution, but because this is the part that stays with me after everything else fades.